Recently, when I passed through Chinese customs, the staff unexpectedly checked the chat records of our WeChat group. I don't know what's going on.
In recent days, some people have found that certain places in China have started spot-checking the phones and computers of inbound travelers. According to a report by the South Korean news agency Yonhap, on May 10th, a Hong Kong tourist at Shanghai airport was asked by officials to check their phone and even opened the messaging app WeChat to check their conversation history. And this situation is not isolated. Yonhap reporter Pei Shenzhen said, according to eyewitness descriptions, spot checks have already begun in some areas. He reminded Chinese tourists and foreigners in China to be vigilant about their safety. On April 26th, the Chinese Ministry of State Security announced a new regulation that will be implemented on July 1st, giving law enforcement officials the right to inspect electronic devices. At that time, passengers' phones or computers may be intercepted by law enforcement officers. The introduction of the new national security regulation has once again raised concerns among people in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and overseas. The South Korea media mentioned that this regulation was originally scheduled to be implemented in July, but customs in Shenzhen and Shanghai have already started enforcement. According to Radio Free Asia's report on May 7th, customs in Shenzhen and Shanghai have started spot-checking the phones or laptops of inbound travelers. Ms. Jiang, a resident who recently returned to Hong Kong from Shenzhen, said that she saw a woman behind her being intercepted by customs officers to check her phone at the Futian port in Shenzhen. Ms. Jiang said, "When passing through customs in Shenzhen, I saw two female customs workers next to me checking the phones of a female tourist. They opened her phone, looked through it, and even said, 'You have more than one phone. Take out the other phone and let us see.' I don't know what happened after that. I just saw it when passing through customs." Ms. Jiang recently also experienced the same situation at airports in Nanjing and Hangzhou. They just look at the contents of your phone, like what messages and photos you have. That day, I cleaned up my phone a bit and deleted some highly sensitive content. In addition, Mr. Xiao, a resident of Shanghai, revealed that when he recently returned to Shanghai from Japan, he also saw customs officers at the airport stop a man, check his phone, and then let him go, indicating that they did not find any problems. Regarding the phenomenon of many people being suddenly checked by customs officers for their phones and other items, legal scholar Lu Chenyuan told Radio Free Asia that this new regulation will cause concern and fear among the public. Lu Chenyuan said, "I think their goal is to create a situation where everyone is self-conscious, making everyone conduct strict self-censorship, such as not contacting people outside the country and focusing on inspecting things like Signal, Telegram, and other contents. This is completely contrary to the right of freedom of speech granted to citizens by the Constitution." Scholar Chen Daoyin, who resides in Chile and specializes in political science, believes that Chinese officials have been taking action to inspect the electronic devices of inbound individuals, and the current move is just to formalize the administrative and enforcement procedures through legislation. Chen Daoyin said, "The stronger a regime's sense of crisis, the stronger its desire for control. In the past 2 years, customs have begun spot-checking the electronic devices of inbound individuals. Administrative practices in China are often enacted first and legislated later. In fact, before this law was enacted, it had already been done in the process of judicial practice in China. According to its enforcement procedures and requirements, approval from the municipal level authorities is required for on-site inspection of electronic devices. But what if they can't produce it? This is a relatively large gray area, giving law enforcement officers the power of discretion." External Analysis believes that the new national security regulations not only allow foreigners to be inspected for their phones and computers, but also make Chinese nationals returning from abroad potential targets for inspections. Scholar Mr. Liu said that by issuing such regulations, officials other than those responsible for inspection or national security personnel can arbitrarily check the phones of ordinary people. National security pushes into everyone's life, creating an omnipresent atmosphere of national security terror. At the same time as the introduction of the new national security regulation, China's highest legislative body announced on April 26 this year the revision of the anti-espionage law, expanding the enforcement powers of national security units. China has complete interpretive power over the definition of espionage and can detain and search anyone within China without any evidence of criminal activity, including prohibiting suspects from entering or leaving China. This newly revised anti-espionage law will take effect on July 1st this year. The revision and expansion of the enforcement definition of this law have made many foreign individuals and companies deeply uneasy. They believe that the content of the revised draft is broad and vague and may be further abused by the Beijing authorities, potentially threatening the safety of their families and company employees. On April 15th, China's National Security Education Day, the Chinese Ministry of State Security issued a video through its WeChat account. The 3-minute video signaled to the Chinese people, foreign spies are everywhere. In the video, a man disguises himself as a street snap expert, technology expert, business elite, and delivery guy, collecting various sensitive national secrets hiding in the sea of people. They can disguise themselves as anyone. The voiceover says, but with 1.4 billion of us, we can build 1.4 billion defense lines. And the camera shows men, women, and children of all ages, including a little girl riding a child's bike. In fact, the Chinese anti-espionage law has been implemented for more than 9 years. During this period, the Beijing authorities have always supported citizens who report espionage activities. The Beijing Evening News reported in April 2018 that individuals who provide leads play a special role in preventing espionage activities or uncovering espionage cases. They can receive rewards ranging from 100,000 yuan to 500,000 yuan. This reward program received nearly 5,000 reports within a year, and the hotline continued to receive a high volume of calls, cited an example where a taxi driver named Wang reported several foreigners for carrying unidentified equipment lingering near a military restricted area. After thorough investigation by national security agencies, it was discovered that these individuals had backgrounds in foreign intelligence agencies and were planning to steal China's core military secrets. On the Douyin Special platform, a short video uploaded by the Tongbai County Public Security Bureau in Henan Province last year called for the public to report spies, attracting widespread attention. In the video, a woman in police uniform stated that according to the anti-espionage law, citizens reporting espionage activities play an important role in investigation and can receive a reward of up to 500,000 yuan. The video indicated that so-called spies could be among us in daily life, possibly just passing by. It also suggested that individuals near military facilities with photographic equipment or making inappropriate comments online could be suspected spies. Some netizens use the term walking 500,000 to refer to potential targets for reporting. So who exactly are these walking 500,000? According to some mainland media, in general, individuals who conduct interviews under the guise of journalists, hobby enthusiasts, overseas trading companies doing market research, tourists interested in restricted areas, members of non-governmental organizations, and kind-hearted people who show special concern for sensitive individuals or their families are likely to be the walking 500,000. On April 15th this year, the Ministry of State Security released the top 10 anti-espionage cases, with Li Hengli, also known as Li Huxiang, topping the list for espionage for providing financial support to pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong in 2019. The video was filled with typical forced confessions, aimed at humiliating and tarnishing the reputation of the target. Also mentioned were Michael Korvig and Michael Spavor, widely regarded as victims of Chinese hostage diplomacy, but the video provided almost no details of their espionage activities. So far, the Chinese Ministry of State Security's WeChat account has published more than 200 posts, and this year it has increased its efforts in multimedia such as cartoons, videos, animations, and documentaries. The propaganda reinforces the impression that any interaction between Chinese and foreigners will be suspected by the government. The Chinese Ministry of State Security is working hard to instill a sense of terror about spies in the minds of young people, creating a sense of distrust among people, disrupting normal social life, and causing resentment in Western societies. According to research by Pei Min-shin of Claremont McKenna College in the United States, Western mainstream media have devoted a great deal of coverage to China's high-tech surveillance in recent years. However, he believes that the Chinese Communist Party mainly relies not on technology, but on organization. By organization, it's meant that in order to catch spies, the CCP encourages the entire population to collect information. Pei Min-shin said that informants are the lowest level in the CCP's informant system, and the more advanced informants are special agents. Nowadays, taxi drivers, delivery drivers, cleaners, vendors, building managers, and parking attendants are often informants and special agents. They can come into contact with many people and observe many things up close. East Asia Forum quoted a survey conducted by the Pew Research Center in 2023. It stated, individuals in most Western countries have a negative view of China. The Chinese government's tightening of social regulations may make foreign tourists uncomfortable in China. Official travel advice from some governments also echo this law, sometimes using quite strong language. On April 12th, the U.S. State Department updated its travel warning for mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau, maintaining a Level 3 risk warning for mainland China and Macau and listing Hong Kong travel as Level 2 risk. The updated guidelines reiterated that U.S. citizens traveling to or living in China may be detained, unable to obtain U.S. consular services or receive information about their suspected crimes. American citizens in China may face long-term interrogation and detention without fair and transparent due legal process. Australia advises tourists to exercise a high degree of caution, warning that Australians may face the risk of arbitrary detention or harsh enforcement under broadly defined national security laws. The political environment has also affected the number and price of flights. This is especially true for flights between North America and China. In April of this year, there were 332 round trips between China and the United States, compared to 1,506 in April 2019. Foreigners are no longer coming to China for tourism. The visible presence of foreigners in scenic spots has significantly decreased. Currently, the number of foreigners entering China is only 30% of the 2019 level. During the May 1st holiday, a blogger in Shanghai interviewed several waves of foreign tourists with blonde hair and blue eyes at the city god temple. Except for a Czech couple, all the others were Russians. In early May, Japan welcomed the Golden Week long holiday. European and American tourists were everywhere in Japan, and many wealthy Chinese also traveled to Japan for tourism and shopping. The number of visitors to Japan has returned to pre-pandemic levels. Meanwhile, relatively few Japanese tourists went to China. Except for Hong Kong, no major Chinese city made it to the top 10 destinations for Japanese travelers. One reason is that Japanese people feel fearful about going to China. In recent years, the CCP has detained many Japanese businessmen in China on charges of espionage, leading to a high level of caution or increasing psychological vigilance among Japanese people. On February 29th, the Japanese ambassador to China, Kenji Kanasugi, stated at a joint meeting of the Liberal Democratic Party that as many as 120 members of the Japanese Diet visited Taiwan last year, but only a few visited China. Beijing hopes that the Japanese Diet members will actively visit China. However, attending members countered that even if they were invited, there is a possibility of being arrested and unable to return to Japan. Previously, a senior executive of a Japanese pharmaceutical company, Astellas, was detained in China in March last year on charges of violating the anti-espionage law. 6 months later, he was detained on criminal charges. Although Japan protested through official channels, it was unable to successfully rescue him. In late August last year, Japan Broadcasting Corporation, NHK, cited Japanese diplomatic sources confirming that a Japanese man in his 50s was prosecuted by the CCP under the anti-espionage law. These are just two recent cases involving Japanese citizens ensnared in China's national security apparatus. Eiji Suzuki, the director of the Japan-China Youth Exchange Association, was arrested in Beijing during a visit in 2016 and later sentenced to 6 years in prison for engaging in espionage. He did not return to Japan until 2022 after serving his sentence. Recently, he published a book called 2,279 Days Imprisoned in China, hoping to let everyone know about the true situation in China through his own experience to prevent the next victim. According to the official assessment of the CCP, commenting on Taiwan-Hong Kong issues on social media platforms, taking photos in sensitive locations, discussing sensitive topics, or criticizing the Chinese Communist Party, and conducting interviews without official permission in China may all be considered espionage. In recent years, many have been arrested in China. While Taiwanese businessman Li Mengzhi entered Shenzhen in August 2019, he was accused of being a Taiwanese spy and his phone was checked by customs. He was later sentenced to 1 year and 10 months in prison and 2 years of deprivation of political rights as an additional punishment. 1 month before his release, Li Mengzhi was informed that the additional penalty meant he could not leave mainland China for the next 2 years. In July 2023, Li Mengzhi left China and regained his freedom. A week later, he opened a channel called Freedom Air on YouTube. He exposed how he was misled into confessing the experience of serving his sentence and the use of TV programs for ideological transformation, among other things. In September 2023, Li Mengzhi officially returned to Taiwan and kissed the ground upon arrival. He held up photos that were supposed to be evidence of his guilt, saying he was arrested just for this. He urged Taiwanese people to be especially careful when traveling to mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Li Mengzhi reminded people to clear their phones and not bring their regular phones. If nothing happens, then nothing happens, but if something does, it's really beyond your imagination. Li Mingche, a former Democratic Progressive Party worker, recalled that on March 19, 2017, he went to China to visit friends, entered Zhuhai through Macau, and was arrested by national security personnel upon entry to Zhuhai. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for subverting state power and was transferred to several prisons during his sentence. He was released and returned to Taiwan in April 2022. In August 2022, Wang Zhiyuan, vice chairman of the Taiwan Nationalist Party, was arrested and detained by the Wenzhou Municipal National Security Bureau during his business and residence in Fujian, and was prosecuted by the Chinese Communist authorities for allegedly splitting the country. Today, Li Yonhap, the editor-in-chief of the Eight Banners Culture, who is still detained in China, has been accused of inciting secession. He disappeared after visiting mainland China last March. The above cases illustrate the CCP's intention to deliberately create an atmosphere of fear and to create a warning to others through the revision of the anti-espionage law. This has caused great concern among Taiwanese politicians as the risk of being arrested going to China may be increasing. And Jia Ren, chief of the executive of Taiwan, said that after the easing of lockdown measures, while people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait hope to resume healthy and normal exchanges, the Chinese government's arbitrary restrictions on the personal freedoms of Taiwanese people have harmed exchanges between the two sides. Chen Jiaren reminded the people of Taiwan to be vigilant and to ensure their safety before going to China. Tsai Ming-yen, director of the Taiwan National Security Bureau, recently reminded Taiwanese people to be especially careful when going to the mainland, as the contents of their phones may be checked when entering or leaving customs. Taiwanese businessmen, foreign journalists, and human rights activists must also pay close attention to the impact of the new CCP regulations.